Hey, this is Double R. And I wanted to tell you that Anchor by Spotify is a great and easy way to make a podcast with everything you need and all in one place. Anchor has the tools to allow you to record, edit your podcast straight from your phone or your computer. When hosting with Anchor, you can distribute your podcast to all listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Best of all, it's totally free. So go down the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This is the Let's Roll Podcast with your host, Double R. It's your host that rolls the most, Double R, and this is the Let's Roll Podcast. Today's episode, I talk about I moved back home. I talk about when I moved back home. In this episode, I discuss me moving back home at the age of 46. That was roughly 6 years ago. Some of the challenges and things that I had to deal with when moving back home. And we're going to talk about that and much more right after this. So, a couple of episodes back or so, I did an episode called I Moved Out. This one is I Moved Back Home. And the I Moved Out episode was me moving out when I was at the age of 30. I moved out for the first time, living on my own for the first time. And from that point on, I moved out. I lived on my own. I met my ex-wife. We got married. We moved out of the apartment that I moved in when I originally moved out. And we lived there for about a year. And then we moved to mobile home. And then we lived in the mobile home for almost 8 years. Or basically 8 years. And then we got a divorce and I moved back home. So it's been about, roughly about 6 years, almost 7 since I moved back home. And moving back home at the age of 46 was weird because I'd been gone for almost 15 years, partly lived on my own, and partly lived with being married. And so when the divorce happened, we were both in a situation. Well, before we even got to the divorce part, me and my ex-wife got to a point up in a place where financially we couldn't stay where we were. And I've kind of talked briefly about this. And everything kind of happened all at once. Financially we couldn't live where we were. I was unhappy. And I wanted a way out, but for the longest time, I didn't even think I had a way out. And I tried to make it work, and it just came to a head. And so we had found ourselves in a situation where we needed to get out of the trailer. But at that particular point, I wasn't saying divorce. I just said, let's separate. Because we had this plan we talked about buying a house. And we had this plan that when we bought a house and it might not be ready right away, we would move out of our trailer, get out from under that, and be able to save some money. And she was going to go stay with her parents. I was going to go stay with my mom. And the reason we weren't staying together is because her parents' house wasn't really accessible for me. And the reason she wasn't coming to my mom's house is because we had 2 dogs at the time. And my mom didn't really want the dogs at her house. So we just decided that if the time came that we would just separate, we buy a house, get out of our trailer deal, and save some money for about a month or whatever until the house was finalized and move in. Well, the housing never really happened, but we still had this plan in place. And so when we got to this point where financially we weren't able to stay in the mobile home, and I was unhappy, then it was my opportunity to say to her, look, until we can work out the finance part, let's separate. This because I'm not happy and I'm not sure what I want, and I want to. I feel it would be good for both of us to separate, and we go. We. I'll go to my mom's. You go to your parents, and we'll revisit, so to speak. Well, make a long story short, we didn't revisit. We ended up getting a divorce. But I actually moved back home before I got the divorce. But that being said, it ended up in a divorce. So I moved back home. Well, when I moved back home, I no longer have my old room that I used to have when I lived here at that time, 15, 16 years ago. So it's now a guest bedroom. And it had gone through multiple changes even from the time that I moved out. It was my mom's sewing room. It was my room for my grandmother, and then it became a guest room. And then when my dad passed, it became not only the guest room, but my mom started sleeping in that room because she didn't like to be that far back into the house. So, so it went through some changes. Also, when I moved back, my friend that lives with us was living here, and so he had what would be considered my brother's room. So there was no other room for me to live in. So the dining room area became my little room. But when I first moved here, it had no wall. And it wasn't too long after that I moved in. I was like, no, we got to have a wall. I got to put a wall up. So we had a wall pulled up. Some of the challenges from going from living on your own and living with somebody that you were married to now moving back home to your mom's house. And she had a boyfriend that was living here. She had what became my friend living here. And then I moved back. My mom's makes it very much aware a lot of times that this is her house. It's her rules. It's blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to step on anything like that. I just need a place to lay down and go to sleep and just kind of have my own little space. And it was weird moving back home at first. Since I've been back home, I will tell you I'm glad I'm home because I was able to come in and help my mom in ways that she needed help. Not in any kind of physical way, but more like a way of managing her finances, managing different things like, I order the groceries, I make sure all the bills are paid, I make sure she gets to her doctor's appointment, and that she, we keep her on track about taking her medicine and all that. At some point, my mom had a mild or mini stroke, and we don't know when or where or how. But ever since then, her memory is not the best it was. So, but medically, I make sure that she's okay and make sure I'm able to do those things now, and it makes me feel good that I'm in a place where I can do those things and um, help manage things that she needs to take care of. It does suck to to be back home because when I was married to my ex-wife, I had a purpose of getting up every day, take her to work, go pick her up every day, and once we separated, that purpose was gone, and I wasn't working. I was at the tail end of the uh, job I had managing the hall, and so that was kind of going away. And even though I was working kind of part time, my money is disability. I'm on disability because I worked for years and years and years. It just got to a point where physically it was harder for me to keep a full time job or even find a job. Period. And then at one point when I got on disability, made it even harder to get a job because I had to make I could get a job as long as I was making under a certain amount of money, so I could be able to keep my disability. Um, so that was coming to an end. That job was coming to an end. So I didn't really have a job. I didn't have any reason to get up every day. I just, you know, like, don't get me wrong, I woke up, but I'm just saying, like, uh, life kind of just came to a almost like a stop. And I'm not one that goes out a lot. I don't like to go to a bar. I don't like, uh, I don't go to dance clubs or nightclubs or anything like that. I don't like to go to places that are real crowded. Um, so socially, there wasn't a whole lot of places for me to go and do anything. So I'm living back at home. I don't have most of my friends that I have are either married or have jobs or they just have things going on in their lives. So I didn't have like a lot of friends that I could go out with or do things with. And so I had to, the first thing that I did to kind of give me something to do and something to motivate me to just kind of stay active was starting the gaming channel. So I created Double R Gamers and did that pretty strong for, man, for at least 3 years, maybe 4. And then that kind of just, it got, the only thing about the gaming channel, if we just had better internet, I would really like work hard doing that because I wanted to stream and our internet just sucks at streaming. I can stream, but it's just not good. And yes, I can make videos, but the popular channels that get popular and stay popular are the ones that stream. They do very, very few just videos. They just stream. And I just don't have that ability to do quality streams because of our internet here. So that kind of went eh. And then of course we had the pandemic hit, and that kind of slowed everything down. Um, Another thing early on when I sorry about that was Alexa. Sometimes she just talks. So but early on when I moved home, I was in a manual chair, and that's another reason I didn't go out a lot. It's because I was having a hard time being able to get into my van on my own. Depending on how I parked, I could do it, but most of the time I'd have to have somebody either go with me, or I'd have to have somebody walking by to push me up into the van, And then by the time I got my power chair, and I was had to get over the fear of that. I had to get over the fear and the uncomfortableness of going up and down the ramp in the power chair. But that wasn't even the problem at first. The problem at first was I get my chair, I got to start getting over this fear. But then the pandemic hit, and that just shut down everything. So even the places that I would go couldn't go anymore. So it's been weird since I moved back home because there's a lot of things that are way different from when I was living on my own to things that changed so drastically that I'm just now feeling like I can get out and go do things and and that probably has a lot to do with my new wife. Um, in a way, she pushes me to get up and go and do things, and even pushes me sometimes out of my comfort zone, which is a good thing. And like initially, it's a bad thing in my head because I don't want to be pushed out of my comfort zone, but she pushes me out of my comfort zone, and which for the most part is a good thing. Um, there's a lot of things that I don't go do or don't even try to do because I want to stay within what I'm comfortable in doing and where I feel safe. And not that my wife now pushes me to do unsafe things, but it's just things that I'm not used to doing. And it would be like crossing a busy street. I'm not used to doing that. I don't put myself in those positions. And it's partly because she lives in the city area or city of Houston. It's more city like, and I live out in the rural area, out the outskirts of Houston. And so the last 7 years that we've known each other, it's she's pushed me to do things that I'm not used to doing, which is a good thing. I like that. I like that she pushes me. Sometimes I got to tell her to ease up a little bit and don't roll her eyes when I'm not wanting to do something. But it's kind of like you just gotta have patience. Just have a little patience with me, and I'll come around. But yeah, when I moved back, man, it was just weird. Like I said, I moved out when I was 30, and this is how my life has worked. I was When I was born, I lived in Houston. I lived in Houston in a particular address in Houston until I was 15. And then my family moved out to where we live now, and I moved out 15 years later. And then I stayed gone for about 15 years, and then I moved back home. So everything goes in 15, 15, 15, 15. And it's just weird. Like I said, it's I joke a lot when me and my mom are out, and my mom will say something like, "Oh, this is my son. He lives with me," and I'm like, "No, mom, I don't live. I don't live with you. You live with me." And it's like they people realize why I'm saying that, because I'm like, I don't want people to know that I live with you at the age that I'm at. Like it is what it is. Will I move out eventually? Sure. Um, Things are not at a place that I can do that yet, but we'll see. Um, but it was weird. Yes, it was definitely weird to move back home, and the challenges, and not being in control of certain things. And when I first moved back, the bathroom hadn't changed from the time I moved out to the time I moved back, but eventually we got those both bathrooms in the house renovated big and made them big enough to accommodate wheelchairs, and which was so much better. I am so happy that happened. Um, so that was a good needed to be done. Like I said, when I first moved back, I didn't really have a room. It was just the dining room was an open space, and so it wasn't too long after I moved in and we got the wall built to give me more privacy. Um, so um, uh, so now there's an extra bedroom in the house now, even though they say they don't consider it a bedroom because it doesn't actually have a closed-in closet, which is dumb, but whatever. Um, when I first moved back, parking was kind of an issue because when I first moved back, I was in my manual chair, and to make it easy on me to get in and out of the van with no real issue, then I parked in the front where I could park beside the concrete driveway. And so when I parked beside it, I was my the concrete, we'll call it the concrete parking platform or parking place, was up high. So it'd be like me parking next to a curb. So when I parked there, and then I could let the ramp down, it'd be more like a bridge. So it helped me get in and out when I was in my manual chair. The only problem was that when it rained, it made it really bad for me to park there because I could get my van stuck and whatever, blah, blah. So eventually I ended up parking in the back under the carport. And it wasn't too long after I started doing that when I got the power wheelchair. So now that's where I park now, is in the back. Um, so it's a little bit better now, but initially that's where I had to park. And so, like I said, we had the bathrooms renovated. Um, and it was just getting used to being in a house that wasn't necessarily mine or I was in control of. And we're all pretty much disabled in this house. My mom's boyfriend's in a wheelchair. I'm in a wheelchair, and my friend's in a wheelchair. And then my mom is getting older and, doesn't get around as good as she used to. I mean, she can still function and still does really well, but we pretty much all have to have things where we can get to them easier and reach them. And so it becomes cluttered sometimes and messy. And since when I was with my ex-wife, I had to adjust to her wanting things cleaner. And even though I went rolling and kicking and screaming, about it, I got used to it. And now when I moved here, it's like, okay, that what I got used to is out the window when it comes to here. And I know that eventually we're probably going to have some kind of help, some kind of maid or something come in and help clean and do things that we're not all able to do. So that might be something that happens sooner than later. I don't know. But I'm glad that I moved back home. I'm glad that I'm here right now. And I'm glad that I'm able to help with the things that need to be taken care of. And could I do what I do and not live here? Yeah, absolutely. But for right now, it works for me to be here and to help with my mom and help with finances and stuff like that. So I'm glad. But that's me. I moved back home when I was 46. It was 15 years after I had moved out. 15, 16 years, somewhere in there. And you never know when you're going to move back home. And so don't look at it as a bad thing, but, just look at it like at least you had somewhere to go. And I'm glad that I was able to come back here. If I thought I could have came back here earlier, when I realized that I wasn't happy in my marriage, I probably would have made the move a lot sooner. But I just didn't feel like I had a place that I could go. And I knew I couldn't make it on my own. And really at the time, I don't think my ex-wife could have made it on her own. She's proved otherwise since then, but, at the time, it was just where I felt there was. And I did try to make it work. And I was, and like I said, initially I just wanted to separate and give us a break and give us some time to regroup and come back and figure out where we really wanted to be. And things didn't happen that way, and we ended up getting divorced. I will tell you this, as I said in my episode about our wedding, we are still very good friends. And she is someone I can call and vent to and talk to, and she can do the same with me. Even though we're not together and it didn't work out between us, we consider each other family and always will. But that being said, that was me moving back home. As always, I appreciate all the support you give the podcast. And make sure you go to theletsrollpodcast.com. Check us out. Give us some feedback. Share the podcast. You know the drill. With that being said, as always, until next time, see ya. Oh, wait, that's the wrong catchphrase. Holy moly, I gotta do this again. With that being said, As always, until next time, let's roll.
Hey, this is Paula, and you're listening to the Let's Roll podcast with host Double R. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media. Find links in the description below or at theletsrollpodcast.com.